Well, a surprise move this morning, wasn't it? Because Restore Britain's Rupert Lowe offered Reform UK an olive branch, or what some people would call an olive branch, to work together to build a future patriotic government.
So Nigel, my message is simple. If you are prepared to work together around serious policies, serious reform, and serious government, then so are we. Not because it's politically convenient for Restore Britain, not because it's personally easy. After the events of the last 18 months, I would certainly rather not be making this offer.
Have two of Britain's most closely watched political figures just opened the door to an unexpected new chapter, a public message, a proposal for cooperation, and a question that quickly spread across political discussions and social media? Could Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage find common ground after a period of well-publicised disagreement? Before we begin, take a second to like this video and subscribe to Britain Talks Daily. Now, let's watch this. Whether this becomes a turning point in British politics or simply another moment in an ongoing political story remains uncertain. But the announcement has undoubtedly generated significant interest, not only because of who made it, but because of what it could represent. In this documentary, we'll examine what was actually said, why the proposal has attracted attention, and what it could mean in the broader context of UK politics. We'll separate confirmed facts from informed analysis and explore several possible outcomes without assuming any one of them will happen. Let's begin with the announcement itself. Rupert Lowe's message was direct, acknowledging that his differences with Nigel Farage had been widely discussed. He argued that personal disagreements should not necessarily prevent cooperation if there were sufficient agreement on broader political objectives. He described his proposal as an attempt to move beyond past disputes and invited discussions based on a set of principles he considered essential. The tone of the message was notable. Rather than revisiting previous disagreements in detail, it focused on the future. Lowe suggested that any cooperation would need to be built around shared policy priorities rather than personal relationships. Throughout the address, he emphasized that his primary concern was what he viewed as the country's long-term direction. That immediately raised an important question. Why now? Political timing is rarely accidental. Public statements of this nature often come after careful consideration of the political environment, recent developments, and future opportunities. While Lowe explained his own reasons for making the proposal, the wider significance remains open to interpretation. Some observers see the announcement as an effort to encourage broader cooperation among political groups with overlapping priorities. Others view it as an attempt to influence the wider political conversation ahead of future electoral contests. At this stage, these remain interpretations rather than established facts. To understand why this proposal has generated such discussion, it helps to look back at the relationship between the two men. Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage were previously associated through Reform UK following Lowe's election to Parliament in 2024. In his message, Lowe reflected positively on that period, describing it as a significant political moment before acknowledging that their relationship later deteriorated. He stated that he disagreed with the way he was removed from Reform UK, but also made clear that he did not wish to revisit those disputes, instead saying he wanted to move forward. That shift in emphasis from disagreement to potential cooperation is one of the reasons the announcement attracted attention. Rather than focusing on personalities, Lowe framed his proposal around a broader argument that political cooperation should be considered where there is sufficient agreement on key issues. Whether others share that view is a matter for public debate, but the proposal itself was presented as an invitation rather than a declaration that an agreement already exists. Importantly, there has been no indication in the source material that any formal arrangement had been reached at the time of Lowe's statement. The proposal represents an offer to explore cooperation, not confirmation that such cooperation will occur. That distinction matters in politics. Proposals, discussions, and agreements are very different stages of a process. Public announcements can begin conversations, but they do not necessarily determine how those conversations will end. As the story continues to develop, the central question remains the same. Will this proposal lead to meaningful dialogue, or will it simply become another notable moment in the evolving history of British politics? Before exploring the possible answers, we first need to examine the principles Rupert Lowe Lowe said would form the basis of any future cooperation, and why those principles have become a focal point of discussion. To understand why Rupert Lowe's message attracted so much attention, it's important to examine what he actually proposed. Rather than making a general appeal for unity, he outlined a series of policy areas that he believed would need to form the basis of any future cooperation. These included immigration, public finances, energy governance, and public trust in politics. He argued that meaningful cooperation would require agreement on these broad principles rather than simply setting aside personal disagreements. Regardless of where viewers stand politically, one thing is clear: the proposal was framed as being policy-led rather than personality-led. That distinction is significant because political alliances are rarely sustained by goodwill alone. They typically depend on whether parties or movements believe they share enough common objectives to work together while still maintaining their own identities. Why political cooperation can be difficult. British politics has a long history of competition between parties and movements that may agree on some issues while disagreeing strongly on others. Even where there is overlap, differences over leadership, priorities, strategy, or policy detail can make formal cooperation difficult. That broader context helps explain why Lowe's proposal immediately became a topic of discussion. It raised questions not only about the relationship between two individuals, but also about whether different political groups could realistically work together in the future. At the time of Lowe's statement, however, no formal agreement had been announced. His message represented an invitation to explore cooperation, leaving any response or future negotiations uncertain. Public reaction. As often happens with major political announcements, reactions were mixed. Some commentators viewed the proposal as a pragmatic attempt to encourage dialogue after a period of division. Others questioned whether the differences between the two sides were too substantial to overcome. Still others chose to wait before drawing conclusions, noting that public statements are only one stage in what can often be a lengthy political process. This range of responses reflects an important point about politics. Announcements may generate headlines, but their long-term significance often depends on what follows rather than on the announcement itself. Looking beyond the headlines, news cycles tend to focus on dramatic moments. A public offer, a speech, or a statement can dominate attention for days. But political developments are usually shaped over much longer periods. Questions that remain open include: will there be further discussions? Will any response be made publicly? Could common ground be identified on specific issues? Or will both sides continue on separate political paths? At this stage, none of those questions have definitive answers. For viewers trying to understand the significance of the proposal, distinguishing between confirmed information and future possibilities is essential. The bigger picture, whatever happens next, the announcement illustrates how political debates are influenced not only by elections and legislation, but also by relationships, strategy, and public communication. It also highlights how individual statements can shape wider political conversations, prompting supporters, critics, journalists, and analysts alike to consider what future developments might look like. As the story continues to evolve, the focus is likely to shift from the proposal itself to any subsequent actions or responses. That brings us to the final question: where could events go from here? Possible future scenarios. While predicting political outcomes is rarely straightforward, several broad possibilities can be considered. The first is that discussions take place and some form of cooperation is explored. Such cooperation could range from informal dialogue to more structured arrangements, depending on whether common objectives are identified. A second possibility is that both sides acknowledge areas of agreement while continuing to operate independently. Political movements often cooperate on selected issues without forming broader partnerships. A third scenario is that no agreement is reached. Differences over policy, leadership, or political strategy could ultimately outweigh any shared priorities. At present, the available information does not establish which of these outcomes, if any, will occur. Lowe's statement was an invitation to consider cooperation, not confirmation that an agreement exists. Why this story matters. Political developments such as this attract attention because they raise broader questions about how alliances are formed, how disagreements evolve, and how political movements respond to changing circumstances. Whether viewers support or oppose any particular political viewpoint, understanding these processes helps explain why certain announcements receive significant public attention. It also serves as a reminder that politics is rarely static. Relationships can change, priorities can shift, and proposals that once seemed unlikely may become subjects of serious discussion or may simply remain proposals. What to watch next? As this story develops, several developments will be worth monitoring. Any public response from Nigel Farage or Reform UK, further statements from Rupert Lowe or Restore Britain, whether meetings or discussions are confirmed, how political commentators and analysts interpret any future developments, whether subsequent events alter the direction of the conversation. These are the developments that will provide greater clarity than speculation alone. Final thoughts. Rupert Lowe's public proposal has undoubtedly become a notable moment in the current political conversation. By inviting dialogue despite previous disagreements, he has introduced a new topic for political observers to examine. What happens next, however, remains uncertain. In politics, proposals begin conversations. Decisions, negotiations, and actions determine where those conversations ultimately lead. For now, the announcement stands as an invitation rather than a conclusion, a reminder that political developments often unfold over time, with their significance becoming clear only in retrospect. Thank you for watching. If you found this balanced breakdown helpful, consider subscribing for more documentary-style coverage of UK politics and public affairs. We focus on verified information, careful analysis, and clear explanations of the stories shaping today's political landscape. And we'd like to hear your perspective based on the information currently available. What do you think is the most important development to watch next? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for joining us.